So first I will be moving those out of the way just to here, and then I will start digging the trench. And that's the advantage of digging a trench. Hi everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we will start working in this last corner of our garden that isn't landscaped at all. I had mentioned this in previous videos, and what I want to do today is plant these hollies as a hedge. And first, in case you haven't seen one of the last videos, I will show you where they came from. So just walking past here, that's the large quince we still need to prune. And then we had these hollies planted back here. But as you can see, there was not a lot of space anymore, really. Originally, we did not have trees here, and also the quince was not as large as it is these days. So this is why we removed the hollies from here, and now we will be planting them in this new area that still needs complete landscaping as a first step. So you can see it from here that we want to start with a hedge from over there and going all the way down as far as we can reach with the plants we have. So the plant we're planting today is a holly. I think in the last video I said it was a Japanese holly, but it's not. This one is just a normal holly, and you can recognize that by looking at the leaves, and you see they have these little like spikes here. At the end, they're a little bit stingy, and this is just a normal holly. Normally they have red berries during the winter. These ones don't. I'm not entirely sure which cultivar this one is. It was a long time ago that we bought them, but this seems to be more like, or I hope it is more like a cultivar that is for hedge growing, which means, and you can kind of see that when looking at the plant, that they are growing rather tall than wide, really. So, but because they did not have enough light there for a few years where they were originally, you can see they do not have that many leaves. So I'm hoping that now that they will have more light and more air again, that they are gonna be growing a bit bushier, hopefully. We'll see. Here we kind of made a start the other day already with digging some test holes to see how big the holes were. Have to be compared to the distance we need for the plants. And actually we were just discussing, I think we may be digging actually a trench as opposed to digging separate holes, because the root balls you can see have different sizes, and also I do want to be generous with filling in new planting soil because these hollies, they really need it, I think. So that's why I think a trench is actually a better option. And the start is back there with this one plant here, and then we're gonna be moving all the way along the fence, and this is to about, I think, half the plants we have, and then we will just continue all the way to however far we get with these plants we still have to put into the ground. So first I will be moving those out of the way just to here, and then I will start digging the trench. So today I'm working with 2 wheelbarrows, and that's because I want to use one to take some of the nice soil I will be digging out now and mix with the planting soil to plant the hollies later on. And the second one, this one here, what you saw me taking off is just the top part of the grass slash weed slash soil because it contains still plants. And this is, I do not want to mix that in with the new planting soil, and this will just go on our compost pile. So this is why I'm working with 2 wheelbarrows today. And now we'll start to take out the in between here, the soil, which is good soil, which can be mixed with the planting soil. So this is now the first part of this trench. We did not measure it. This is of course something you could do if you wanted to be really exact with where you plant and where you dig. We eyeballed it just using the fence as a reference line. And the trench is not very deep. That's because the root balls of the hollies aren't that deep, so there's no need to dig any deeper. Then also, that's the other reason why it's not that deep. You see here, this is one large root from one of our spruces in the background, and we encountered there's this one here. I think this may be the same as this one, so we always try to keep roots in place. We never want to damage any roots, especially larger ones, when we plant anything, so we just work around it. And then we have another one back there, so this is why the hole back there is also quite shallow. And now I will be mixing the soil with planting soil and then get planting. So this is now the nicer soil I dug out, and there's basically nothing in there, like, you know, little roots I pick out. And if I have chunks like that, I either crumble it with my hands. You see, that's quite easy at the moment with the moisture in the soil, or otherwise you can also just use the spade and go through to make these chunks smaller. And this soil now I will be mixing with the planting soil. And this gives a really nice mix of existing soil and fresh soil. So the planting soil we're always using is an organic planting soil that is peat-free. And now I'm just mixing it in carefully with the existing soil. And you see, pick out still roots and other bits that I find in there and make larger chunks, like this one, smaller just with the spade. So now I'm starting to fill in the soil into the trench. I could of course tip over the wheelbarrow, but I prefer doing this bit by bit actually, because it lets you judge a bit better where more soil is needed, and that will give the hollies a good layer of nice new soil at the bottom. Okay, I will start placing the plants now, and I'll grab this one and start from this end and just push them in a little bit so they stand up, and kind of turn them in a position where I think this is gonna fit, but this can be adjusted later. And that's the advantage of digging a trench, because I can now adjust the distances of the plants as needed without being dependent on a single planting hole. So I'm trying to space these so that they have a little bit of air here and space left to grow. But also I do not want to space them too far apart, because they do not have that many branches and leaves here. Normally, if you would have new plants that are maybe, you know, bushy and fuller, you'd most likely leave more space between the plants, but that will be given on the planting card anyway, what the recommended spacing is. But for these, as you can see, this seems fine to me to have that kind of space. What's that? That's about 8 inches, maybe 20 centimeters, something like that approximately, from root ball to root ball. Yeah, but I'm kind of eyeballing it really to see how it fits, and that looks fine to me. So this one is a little bit crooked here. It has like a bend, and I'm trying to place the root ball so that this trunk is actually straight. So I'm compensating for it. And you can see that they have different heights, but this is nothing to worry about because at the end of the video I will be pruning them as well and adjusting the heights. So it looks more like a hedge. Okay. And this one, oops. So now that's as far as we can plant for the moment. And now, as you may know from me from other videos, let's step back and have a look before we finish planting. So you saw my perspective where I stepped back and had a look, and this looks good to me. Also how the plants are turned looks good. This is also something I just do by eye and by feeling really. And now is the time to adjust this if necessary, but for me that's fine. And now I will start filling in these this trench here, and I will fill first around the plants and push the soil down so the plant is in more like a fixed position and can't tip over anymore, and make sure that the trunk stays straight, and then I will gradually fill in the rest. So now I filled the trench out with the soil mix, and I'm just pushing the soil in wherever there's soil missing. And because hollies like to have moist soil, I'll actually put the soil so that it's a little bit below this trench top level, so that more water can be retained. That's my plan, because also this area down here in summer gets quite hot and sunny, and I want them to grow well and not get too dry. So now that this is done, this half of the hedge is kind of finished, but before I move on to cleaning up the plants and pruning the plants and watering, I will do the other half of the hedge. So that means I will dig a trench first, then mix up the soil like you saw me doing, then put the plants in and fill out the trench and adjust the plants accordingly, so it all looks nice and in one line. Here's another example of how we work our way around existing tree roots. Have a look at this. Starting from here, a really big one. Again, this is from the spruces behind you, and you see going crisscross, and another one coming in here. So we'll just have to work our way around. Now that everything is planted, I will just go through each plant and clean out any dried branches we have. And there's on some of them, there's some bits of dried morning glory left, so I'll pull that off so the plants are nice and clean. And then I will try to find a middle ground between those plants for a final height of this hedge. So let's start with this one here and just clean it out quickly, because they have not been maintained really properly for quite a while. So it's just dried branches like this that I'm removing. There shouldn't be too many, it's more towards the bottom. In traditional style gardens in Japan, there's usually no formal shape. That means bushes and shrubs, hedges, whatever you can see, will not have a formal cut. However, sometimes we saw, or you can find, hedges that have a formal cut, usually a lower growing hedge in kind of a rectangular shape. And I showed you an example of those in my video about the Tofukuji temple garden. I'll link that up there in case you haven't seen it yet. And basically this is what inspired us to plant this hedge, and this is with that in mind I will now go through and prune that hedge. So the hedges we have seen are usually about that height. With this hedge, however, I want it a little bit higher, also to cover up the fence. And if you look at the entire hedge now, the shrubs have completely different sizes, and I will use as kind of a reference that end over there. So you see it. If the final hedge ends up being about here, that I think will look fine, so you can still see a little bit of the fence. And this is why I will now prune, starting with this one actually. That's fine for the moment. And I will do cuts here. So I'm just clipping the tops off to get the idea. And then of course anything that is too low now will grow out over time. So let's continue. I'm again just eyeballing this for now. Okay, so stepping back, yeah, that looks good. And now doing the last ones here. In order to make things easier or more accurate, of course, one could put a string, for example, and measure it out exactly for an exact shape. I never do it really in our garden. I just do it by eye and by feeling, really. So now let's have a look. Okay, that's fine. So the overall picture, it looks a little bit funny at the moment, but as I explained, it will all over time grow denser and grow out and build one nice hedge with a rectangular shape. That's the plan. Now I'm just having a look at the sideline here. So, and I will just shorten a few branches that are already sticking out too much. Just going along this one. And again, all these can be adjusted over time because these plants have just been moved from the other position. I also do not want to prune too much because pruning is a certain type of stress for the plant. So I just want to do a basic shape pruning and leave them alone until the next season. And also what we're doing here is a good example of recycling plants, where we, instead of throwing away plants that we don't need or that are too large for the space they're in, so we don't really like doing that. So occasionally we sell a plant if we cannot find another home for it, but normally when we change over plants, which happens sometimes, we always try to find a new home in our garden for them. Now all that is left to do is to water the plants, and this brings me to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and give us a like. See you next time. Bye.